I met Klaus in 1996, and by 1997, we were maybe getting to live together, and he brings these boxes. I said, "What are they?" He said, "Oh, they're my mother's papers." So I said, "Well, what's in them?" He said, "I don't know, I never looked at them." So I said, "Oh my God, you're bringing these boxes. I'm not married to you. I'm the second wife. They're all in German. Your children aren't going to know what they are. And I'm going to be the evil person who hands over these things and they're going to go to the dump." And that's not a good thing. That is so wrong. This has got to be, you've got to find out what's in those.
I'm Aubrey Pomerance, and I'm the head of the archives of the Jewish Museum Berlin. The story of the Zwilsky family is absolutely unique because they number amongst the very, very small number of individuals who survived, not by going into hiding, not being deported and surviving camps, but survived legally in Berlin as what the Nazis called full Jews and survived at the Jewish hospital. Shortly before Klaus and the family moved into the Jewish hospital permanently, Klaus was issued his identity card, immediately identifying the owner of the card as Jewish by this black J. And when you open up the card on the inside, and this is a picture of Klaus.
Ladies and gentlemen, I now have a picture of a 90-year-old guy smiling.
I came a few days ago and I lived with Klaus and Roberta, his wife. You know, there's something about our conversation, that each conversation, it's like showing another layer in his life or personality. And Klaus he has very vivid personality.
Okay, gentlemen, we can begin.
Oh dear.
Okay, so hello, Klaus.
Hi.
Hi. So let me get started.
I was born in August of 1932, and it was just about 6 months before Hitler became chancellor. My father was a pharmacist. My mother had studied pharmacy, but in January of 1939, Hitler decreed that Jewish people could not work in the professions anymore. My father was no longer allowed to work in the pharmacy. My mother was required to do forced labor, and my father did get a job in the health administration of the Jewish community. So this administration was moved to the Jewish hospital.
Now, the question is often raised, how come the Jewish hospital was able to survive? One of the answers is that, of course, the Nazis had passed a law that not only could Jewish doctors only treat Jews, that meant, of course, that Jews could only be treated by Jewish doctors. So that meant that those Jews who were still living in Berlin, those Jews who were married to non-Jews, who were allowed to still live in Berlin, they were doing forced labors, basically the only places that they could be operated on was the Jewish hospital. So the family moves into the hospital then permanently in, I believe, September of 1943, after having already experienced so much. And of course, the cousins of Klaus were deported then in January of 1943 to Theresienstadt, Philip Kotsova, his wife Gisela, who was Ruth's sister, and their 3 children.
And so one of my most saddest and most vivid memories is waving to my cousins as they were looking out the back of the Lastwagen, the back of the big truck, and waving to them, and the truck was pulling away, and my mother started sending packages.
What Ruth did is she then had a notebook. Ruth noted down the date that the package was then confirmed by the recipients of the package. Many, many dozens of packages being sent and being confirmed. But starting from the 13th of October 1944, there is no longer confirmation. Nonetheless, Ruth continues to note down the date, the 14th of January, 1945. By that time, the Kotsovers had been deported from Theresen to Auschwitz in November of 1944, and the whole family murdered immediately upon arrival. So this is an absolutely unique document. We have nothing else like this in our collection. It's a highly, highly emotionally charged object, telling a very tragic story of both murder and survival in one document. A little bit more than 3 months. The Jewish hospital was liberated by the Russians towards the end of April 1945. And the Zwilsky family was then liberated after having experienced very harrowing days and nights as fighting was going on all around Berlin. What's also extremely special is that 3 months after being liberated, Klaus celebrates his Bar Mitzvah. Klaus Zwilsky was the first boy who celebrated a Bar Mitzvah in Berlin after the war. There were very, very few child survivors. It's a celebration of liberation shortly after the liberation, which makes it really just astonishingly special.
And here's the bagel.
Shine away. Da-da-da-dum. I'm going to be in real trouble because all day long these people all tell me how wonderful I am. So I almost got me to believe it now. So now they're all leaving. Who's going to tell me I'm in big trouble, you know?
I'm leaving.
Is there something that you want to...
Carrot cake, apricot cheesecake, and jumbo brownie. I guess something we both like, you know?
Cookies.
We need to make sure all food groups are represented.
Klaus and I are really close. If you saw our text messages to each other, you'd think we're best friends, not that he's my grandfather. I taught him how to use emojis, so we text all the time.
I'm making you biscuits.
Oh, okay.
From scratch, each one.
Right.
I remember as young as 6 or 7 years old, Klaus would be going to schools to speak to classes that were my age. I remember as my mom would explain to me what Klaus's experience was, I would ask her, well, you know, is he sad about it? Or does he ever think about it? Does talking about it make him sad? And she would tell me, and then Klaus would tell me, that it's so important for him to share this story that he wouldn't pass up the opportunity to do that. And that's sort of how he balances out the sadness of what happened with the reality of sharing it with the next generation.
Picture book, picture...
graphic novel.
Graphic novel?
This is a graphic
okay.
novel. Through the drawings, I try to capture your likeness and find a way. And I think that here, and when you say, here you say too pink or too old, and then I try to do something else and to capture you differently.
Well,
So-
I appreciate it, but I don't like to tell the artist to pink. It's his decision.
No,
so
no, it's...
How did I get to work with the team that is doing graphic novels? I got a call from Aubrey Pomerance. I had told him, you know, I've looked at all my the speeches I've given about the Holocaust. I think I'm going to do less and less because I am older and it's taking things out of me. And so when he called me about this project, I agreed wholeheartedly is because this project is something into the future.
Put it here. Now it's working.
How do you preserve history? I got to admit, I didn't know what a graphic novel was. It seems to be another way of communicating and a way that I think is here to stay and educate people. And I'm happy that perhaps somebody 10 years from now may read my stories and learn about it. The Holocaust, if nothing else. I am not at all surprised that hopefully we will keep in touch even.
I can give you 1,000 hugs.
But can you take my wife and I get taking a hug?
Do a hug. That's not.
You can be at the end of the story.
I can be at the end of the story.
Thank you.
So it was a 2-year journey for him to go through the papers.
Yeah.
Actually come up with what they were, and you didn't even know some of the people in the stories, in the pictures, did you?
No.
No, he didn't know. He had to do homework.
You know, there were a lot of papers from my parents and a lot of correspondence from Theresienstadt, and allowed me to put together some of the back and forth between my mother and her sister there. When we got all through, it got to be quite a collection.
What happens is, though, you gave Aubrey the freedom to then take the material, and then he invited you to come to give talks to the students there, right?
Correct. Behind every man, there's a successful woman or something like that, whichever the saying goes. And this lady here, I think at this point in time, we really feel like partners.
That's a very nervy thing to say.
You see that?
You feel like partners?
We are partners. I'd like to be around when the book comes out. I keep encouraging the artists to work fast.
That's it. That's it.
Oh, and
you
this
see
is,
that? That's what's going
He is,
on.
in fact, working.
Wonderful. Would you like to do closing words?
Well, do we have to kiss? Is that the closing?
Nice. He's such a...